Bouncer. This was Square's first game on the PlayStation 2. It was made for the PlayStation 2 launch. I say launch, but it ended up coming like a few months later, but whatever, close enough. Everyone was so on board with anything that Square made, thanks to all of their incredible RPGs they made on the PlayStation 1, that when the PS2 came out, Square's got a game for it? Oh yeah, we had to have it. And I never actually played this one until just now, and oh my god, I am so glad I did. Every time you boot up the game, it starts with the usual sizzle reel of cutscenes from the game in a nonsensical fashion to inspire excitement of the things to come, which, naturally, you press start to immediately skip, which brings up the title screen and...
The Bouncer.
That voice line is hilarious. The delivery, the seriousness, trying to make it sound cool, flawless. Beginning the story mode starts off with an elaborate cutscene that goes on for way longer than it ever should. A news report goes on and on about a revolutionary new solar generator satellite being launched into space by the Mikado Corporation, while a woman in a hotel room responds to a tweet she disagrees with. The news report then goes on to explain, in detail, of how the satellite works. This goes on for 2 solid minutes. A reminder that this is a beat-em-up game, a genre where the plot is nothing more but an excuse to set you up to repeatedly punch people in the face. Then, it's a helicopter flying over the city saying, they found the target, and it deploys some dudes who fall and land headfirst into some kid's room. This is funny. Whatever sense of self-importance this game has is now gone. I cannot see how this could get any more— oh my god! Are you kidding me? This whole game is going to be a delight! We see the target that they are after, a young girl whose hair wasn't anime enough so she dressed like a banana. She runs up to a bar where she greets
The Bouncer.
Thus we meet our 3 main heroes, Volt, Ko, and Sion. Volt does indeed have horns on his head, my man Ko is tatted up like he's a Game Boy Advance SP, and the game designer said, we have Sora at home. Then the Leather Daddy ninjas break in because they're after the girl, Dominique. This is the major point of the game. All 3 bouncers are playable at any level, and there are multiple endings depending on who you play the most as and in certain areas. I figured I'd start with Sion since he's supposed to be the main character, being on the cover and all. What the hell? He's awful! Look at everyone's stats. There is empirical evidence of how bad he is. Stat-wise, and as we'll see with his personality, he sucks the most. Speaking of personality, Sion is the edgy one that is really boring and uninteresting. Volt is the big gruff one that can handle himself in a fight. And Ko is the plucky comedic one. And this game has 3/4 of the cast of Final Fantasy 15. I know what you're thinking. Why does everyone look like this? The clown shoes, the zippers, the oversized chains, whatever the hell is going on with this hair. Let me just rewind back to the opening credits for a second, and there it is. Who am I kidding? I am just super jealous of that hair, and I don't want to lose what's left of mine. Which means, naturally, that this video is sponsored by Keeps. Keeps is the #1 hair restoration at-home delivery service for men. 2 out of every 3 men will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they're 35. Rather than panicking about how to restore it, the secret is to keep what you already have. Prevention is key. Keeps will get a licensed medical provider to examine your situation online and recommend the best treatment plan for you. That's what I did, and it was actually really easy. All I had to do was take a photo of the front of my hair and of the top, and I sent that in. By that afternoon, they had already contacted me back and got me set up with the best treatment plan for myself. Keeps is FDA approved and much cheaper than any store shelf brand. Most men see results as early as 4 months from starting. Go to keeps.com/ProJared to get 50% off your first order. That's KEEPS.com/ProJared, or click the link in the description down below and get yourself started today. And once again, thank you to Keeps for sponsoring this video. So this is the gameplay. It's a beat 'em up. Punch, kick, and hit dudes until their health bar reaches 0. Every single button on the controller is an attack. Low, mid, high, and a jump attack. You can press them in certain orders to do special combo attacks. Here's the thing with the controls though, they're kinda ass. For one, movement is way too restrictive. Whoever you play as will automatically lock on of sorts to the nearest person to them, making your movement sluggish and against your will, as sometimes you'll try to just get away from everyone, only to stop and crab step at a dude. Like I said, you do have combo attacks, but executing them is much easier said than done. If you look at the manual, it displays some basic combos for each character. Take Sion here. His basic combo is mid, mid, mid. Okay, easy enough. square, square, square. But if you look closer, you'll notice the manual shows the mid button in different sizes. That's because how hard you press the attack button matters. Not many people realize this, but one of the features of the DualShock 2 controller was the fact that it had pressure-sensitive buttons. That means some games could do different effects depending if you lightly press a button or if you press it really hard. Not a whole lot of games actually use this for anything. One of the few examples I can think of is in like Metal Gear Solid 2. If you press it lightly, you hold your gun up, and if you press it hard, you pull the trigger, or you can like adjust how hard you're leaning in first-person mode. The Bouncer uses this feature for fighting. It's completely counterintuitive. I get that the PS2 was all new and shiny, but this is so unnecessary. Imagine trying to input any number of buttons in rapid succession, but also trying to differentiate between a light or a hard press using just your thumb. It's not as easy as you'd think. This resulted in me dropping combos frequently or outright doing incorrect attacks because it's such a finicky system. It gets worse though. Think of how combo attacks work in almost any other video game. Devil May Cry, Street Fighter, God of War, hell, even just Final Fight. There's a responsiveness and timing that is perfect in all of those games. You press attack. When you connect, you press attack again to follow up and continue the combo. It's that simple. Not so with the Bouncer. Instead, you have to input the entire attack string immediately, otherwise it won't work. That means in order to do the simple 3-attack combo, before the first punch even lands, you have to enter all 3 button presses and be committed to doing all 3 attacks before you even know if your attack lands or not. Enemy blocks? Too bad, you already made your choice. Completely miss everyone? Too bad, you're gonna keep swinging away at nothing. And there is no way to cancel out of these animations. Once you start the combo string, you've already put a ring on it whether you wanted to or not. Now combine that kind of forced animation commitment with trying to not mess up the pressure sensitive buttons, and I'm starting to wonder why there's 4 attack buttons when I don't even like trying to use just one of them. Anyway, it's the very first fight of the game, and I die.
Game over.
This is where I learned that this game does not have a continue screen. There is not an option to load from your last save right away. Every single game over results in the game being reset. Thus, every time you die, you go back to the intro cinematic, which you have to skip, only to be once again greeted with
The Bouncer.
This isn't a difficult game by any stretch of the imagination, but you will die due to cheapness or the sluggish controls. So you'll be hearing the title of the game shouted at you several times on every playthrough. Second attempt, I managed to win, and the main BDSM ninja captures Dominique and escapes. Volt points out that these guys are from the same corporation launching that satellite thing. Ko makes a phone call to a secret contact on how to go after them, and Dollar Store Sora provides nothing to the team. Ko mentions a train is heading straight to the corporation headquarters after talking to his mysterious contact, so they head toward the train station only to be stopped by some more dudes. Which is fine, it's a beat 'em up, pretty standard fare. But after winning, the cutscene shows that there's been a panther watching them the entire time.
You recognize that Black Panther?
No.
Whatever you think this game's plot is going to be, you're wrong. In between each stage, you can level up. Yeah, so that was the other big selling point of The Bouncer. It wasn't just a beat 'em up, it's a beat 'em up RPG. It's why every character has stats that they can improve, and it's why they all look like, well, that. You earn points as you defeat enemies, letting you spend them to improve your health, attack, and block power, or spend them to unlock additional special moves. Here's the thing with getting those points though, you only earn them if you land the finishing blow. If any of the NPCs kill them, you get nothing. If you don't get enough points to level up, you're pretty much screwed. So this means in every battle, you're struggling against wonky movement, awkward combo inputs, and your own friggin' teammates to make sure they don't kill steal. That said, you can also work with your teammates to a degree. During fights, you can hear one of your allies signal by whistling or taunting. If you press R2 as they do that, you execute a Trinity attack where all 3 heroes just wreck one dude. It's fancy looking, it's devastating, it's a satisfying payoff, and the damage it deals is not worth it. Good God, I'm way better off just flailing at them with random button presses. Speaking of flailing, surely you've noticed that this game has ragdoll physics. Honestly, it makes a lot of the fights really, really funny. Knocking down enemies is always good for a laugh, but it's even funnier when it happens to a total wiener like Sion. Sometimes you do the splits in the air. Sometimes you end up face down, ass up, and getting slapped around again.
The Bouncer.
Of course, there is an issue with this as well. The game does have a juggle option of sorts, as you can hit an enemy knocked up for extra damage. You can also knock enemies into each other for a bit of crowd control and damage. Enemies can also knock you or your allies into each other irritatingly often. In most battles, I did my best to get away from everyone else just to make sure I'm not getting slapped around. Finally making it to the train, flailing our limbs at dudes until they stop moving, we come up to our very first boss fight against this lady, who is dressed like this. Ko, minutes earlier,
Oh man, we're gonna freeze out here.
So nice to see you again, Echidna.
Is that you, Volt?
"Oh, Volt, wow, I didn't see you back there." So yeah, these two have a history of some sort, which is very mysterious and oh so intriguing. It's hard to take her seriously when her name is Knuckles.
My name's Echidna.
Sorry, that's what I meant. Boss fights play out like any other battle, only they have way more health and way better attacks. Which, on top of this very narrow train, just means little room to maneuver as we all get ragdolled around. The only other thing to note is that the bosses are worth way more bouncer points, but just like any other enemy, if someone else gets the last hit, you get 0 of it. You have to last hit the boss to make sure you're getting enough upgrades throughout the game. Also, in this boss fight alone, I died 3 times. After finally defeating her, Echidna says screw this and yeets herself off of the train, just like this, into the ocean while it's winter. Then a gunship shows up, shoots the hell out of the train for whatever reason, disabling the brakes on the train while it's carrying rocket fuel. It's going to explode when it collides. Who is this? Why are they shooting? It's carrying rocket fuel. How is this helping? Then we have this inexplicable gameplay section where you have to find a card key to decouple the cargo load, which gives you approximately 7 seconds to look at 3 separate boxes in the single train car. No matter what, the card is always in the last box. This is the only part in the entire game that involves any kind of environmental exploration, and it lasts less than a minute. I'd call it padding, but it's shorter than an average TikTok video. I find the card, they leap from the train, and now we're in the enemy base. This is the only part of the game where you're in long, extended hallways with branching pathways and multiple groups of enemies, and it's empty. Just long hallways with nothing in them. But this is one of the few times where I actually get to play for more than a single 2-minute fight, because that's how the entire game plays out. Cutscene that lasts like 5 minutes, fight for 1 minute, level up screen, cutscene, fight. Level up, cutscene, fight. Level up, cutscene, fight. It's like any attempt to actually be able to play the game is interrupted by its own self-defeating desire to tell a story that's as in-depth as a sophomore's first ever creative writing class project. You know what I mean by that? Every single character is somehow connected to each other, with everyone having some kind of backstory with them. Nobody is a character, but rather some kind of expository tool to prop up the others. Every single detail is over-explained. It's like a student thought they were making an incredibly well-written, expansive, engaging story just by making sure everything has a proper noun attached to it. These aren't just special forces or the cops, they're from Lucas, whatever that stands for. They don't just work at a bar, they're in a bar called Fate. Do you get it? And that bar isn't just in the city somewhere, they live on Dog Street. And suddenly this kid's shirt in Kingdom Hearts 2 finally makes sense to you. It's so far up its own ass about its own lore that even the load screens have brief bits of story in them. The downside being that they're load screens, so you have to read many lines of text in about 1.5 seconds. There's just not enough time to read the whole thing at every load screen. But when you can parse the words quickly enough, oh my, are they a treat? 11 years ago. Giving up already? No, I'm just hungry. Can't fight on an empty stomach. You're persistent. I'll give you that. What do I do next? Jump off this cliff! I know we all like to make fun of other Square RPGs for being so cutscene heavy that you basically watch more than you play, but I've honestly never, ever had it be so egregiously accurate as I have while playing The Bouncer. In fact, I counted. I added up the total playtime of every successful level I played to the total runtime of every cutscene in a playthrough. There was 32 minutes and 23 seconds of actual gameplay compared to 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 17 seconds of cutscenes. The trio fight their way through and steal a flying patrol platform thing, which they immediately crash into a park that's in the corporation grounds, I guess? They get spotted, and the leather ninjas Naruto run in, but they also do this! The main ninja guy, Mugetsu, goes full try-hard mode, which you can tell because he puts his goggles down.
Here, we have the advantage. You don't stand a chance.
You will never get the girl back!
After beating them up some more, the team finds a giant glass dome where they find an unconscious Dominique. But also there is another woman in an elegant gown playing a melancholic tune on the piano. She brings a great sense of poise and dignity to the story, and what? Excuse me? Frickin' what? She's also the Panther?
The bouncer!
This is the main villain, by the way. His name is Duragon, and it turns out Dominique is his sister, so he's finally kidnapped her back after she ran away. And dressed her in this, I guess. And this old guy is Wong, his master, who was also Sion's master, which is why he's shocked when Duragon suddenly kills him. There's a flashback of young Duragon trying to help Dominique, who is very, very sick, and he carries her to the hospital, only for this gigantic hospital to say, sorry, our one doctor isn't in right now. Try a different hospital. Clarence Isle Sora inexplicably makes his way inside, and there's a fight against Duragon, but also the Panther is there now, I guess? After defeating them, he makes everyone fall into a pit. Everyone gets separated, so there's finally some time for Sion to fight tons of enemies on his own. Only now there's dumb little robots that also get in the way. During this section, Digivolved Sora finds a computer and it's filled with more exposition dumps. It includes how they made guard dogs, how the ninja guys exist through robotomy surgery, basically how everything is robots or made to be part robot. But also in all of this is a file on someone named Chaldea Orchid, who Sion recognizes and has flashbacks of. This was his girlfriend or something from a few years ago, but according to a load screen, everyone thought she died in an explosion. But oh god, oh, that smile is horrifying!
See you in your dreams.
Anyway, the file mentions how the surgery has aged her 10 years, and now Dollar Store Renoa is definitely the Panther Lady, who Sion fights in the very next room with the same strategy as fighting the computer in Mortal Kombat 1. Also, she can walk through walls, I guess? Dominique is napping on the couch in the very next room, but guess who's back? Again! And there's a full group of special forces with them. But don't worry, Volt appears! And one of those ninjas was Ko in disguise, just in time for another boss battle versus Mugetsu. After beating him up, again, he just kind of vanishes as everyone finally gets reunited. Quickly making their escape, Ko and Volt act as distractions so that Sion can get his girlfriend, who is still in high school, out of the building. And now, it's an escort mission, with Dominique being quite possibly one of the dumbest companions I've seen. Okay, first off, there's enemy robots now, because why not? The weird part about them is that they'll attack, sure, but if you hit them at any point in time, they'll just kind of freeze up. They don't react or recoil, they just stop. Like they forgot to animate it, so the robots just reset every single time they're hit. So it doesn't matter what attack you use, so long as it's fast enough to interrupt their dumb loader bot attacks. I can just roundhouse kick for days and be okay. Except Dominique is there. She doesn't fight, she doesn't dodge, she doesn't get out of the way. In fact, she tries to stand as close to you as possible, oftentimes getting in the way of your own attacks. And she has her own health bar, which is very small, but that won't stop her from standing in the worst places possible and get absolutely pummeled for it. I got more game overs here because of Dominique. And you have to run through 5 floors of robots and dudes while making sure she doesn't get hit at all. But then at the end, there's another robot dude who uses his extendy grabby hand to snag Dominique and squeeze her so hard she passes out. It's just enough time for the return of Volt and Ko, who I guess was just right over there the whole time. It's another boss fight that isn't very remarkable. Upon defeating him though, dozens more show up and they're basically screwed. In desperation, Dominique shrieks. Hey, remember that solar satellite thing that was mentioned at the very beginning of the game? It abruptly activates, which causes Dominique to activate because she's actually been a robot this whole time, and she goes sicko mode, obliterating every single robot boss with the biggest chunk of anyone I've ever seen, kills everyone, and then passes out while her motors smoke.
The bouncer!
Volt, who admits he used to work for this evil Mikado corporation, explains how Dominique is actually the younger sister of Duragon. But she died a long time ago, so Duragon made a robot copy of her. But this robot sister he made is also for some reason the main battery for his solar satellite, so he needs everyone to rocket ship her up into space. Need I remind you, this game was about 3 bouncers working at a bar. Then Leather Daddy Ninja shows up once again, steals Dominique away again, and takes her to space. And then Echidna comes back because why not? We need another boss fight.
I shall become number 1. Once I defeat all of you.
Good God! Why did her boobs jiggle that much just from pointing? If I finally got your attention from your other screen because you heard me say the word boobs and jiggle, you now have to like this video and subscribe to my channel.
The bounce.
The group hops onto one of those patrolling platform things from earlier to chase after the rocket ship while the same squad of fighters that shot the train also shoots the rocket. But before they can make it on, Mugetsu appears one last time for yet another boss fight. Now he'll use all of his ultimate attacks, which is him making himself rip like a goddamned Beyblade. Once defeated, he gets hit off the floating platform and falls into the engine exhaust of the rocket ship and gets absolutely annihilated. Meanwhile, back on the ship, Duragon connects his robot battery sister all up and reveals his master plan: to power the satellite to shoot lasers back on Earth, and it's GoldenEye. The satellite is GoldenEye. Anyway, the first thing he blasts is the hospital that couldn't save his sister originally, which I don't feel the need to point out the hypocrisy here, but there you go. Sora, who was left in the microwave too long, tries to break into the cockpit, but gets stopped by the Panther Woman again, which means we gotta beat her up, and by beat her up, I mean Volt body slams her, and then I kick her in the head repeatedly. Afterwards, she laments how Sion doesn't recognize her, now that she's so much older than him. 10 years! You're only 10 years older now, and you still look exactly the same! And then out of nowhere, Duragon scorpion spears her through the chest from the other room? So then she dies, I guess. Duragon does the whole evil villain monologue thing, explaining how people actually want to be controlled and blah blah blah, whatever, boss fight time. He's a tough fight because he has a lot of health and does a lot of damage and blocks far more often. So it's best to balance your attacks with using your friends as distractions. He's also the final boss, so he absolutely has a second phase. So now Duragon shows us his true form. He's wearing overalls. And oh, your health does not refill between these last fights. Yep, I'm dead. It actually takes me several more attempts at this boss fight. After finally displaying my flailing superiority, Duragon falls and Dominique is rescued. Her robot brain bits inform everyone that they can escape the collision by using the back of their ship, allowing them to get back to the Earth before they crash into the incoming JPEG. Duragon, however, not so lucky. Even after all of these explosions, he dies floating in space, still looking as hot as possible. Finally back home, things are back to normal. Sora, that I bought from Wish.com, begins his shift. Dominique shows up and is gleeful that he is now wearing the pendant that she got from him at the beginning of the game. And credits. You didn't think we were done, did you? There's still 2 more stories to play through.
The bounce.
Remember? You can choose who to play as at every single fight. Doing so changes the viewpoint of the scene to them, garnering different perspectives and often new bits of story information that you didn't get before. It's an admittedly cool idea and a good way to reward replayability if only more was done with it. It doesn't drastically alter the storyline or plot or reward you with meaningful chunks of information. All the broad strokes are the same. They also have slightly different playstyles. Volt hits way harder at the start, and most of his moves are very grappling and wrestling based. Ko is supposed to be Taekwondo, but it isn't so different that he feels like a new character. It has the same issue as when I was playing as Sion. They all have these new moves I could unlock, but what's the point when they're too difficult to connect or not worth the payoff? Why learn all these ridiculous combos with Ko when spamming his uppercut to juggle enemies is just way easier and better? The worst part though is that all the upgrades you got for the other characters stick, which would be fine and good so that they aren't so useless, until you remember that you only get bouncer points to spend when you're the one who gets the last hit. And suddenly, you have team members who do way more damage than you. They also have their own load screen backstories. It's how we learn more of Volt's relationship with Echidna, how they used to work together at the Mikado group, and that it's also against Volt's principles to raise a hand against a woman. The reason that Volt has horns on his face is that they are piercings to cover up his scars from when he got shot in the head twice, I guess, and survived. This time around, I didn't find the card key on the train to make it crash into the building, which plays out mostly the same, only now while making your way through the vast empty hallways, you have to run at the camera and avoid shutters being closed down, not once, not twice, but 5 times. Volt does provide some very valuable context as to this whole part.
Night vision goggles.
Got it all makes sense now. At that part where everyone gets separated, Volt escapes from restraints and has a really mundane level of fighting through enemies. If he escorts Dominique, she's just as obstructive as before, and after defeating Echidna the second time, There's an extended cutscene where she admits more of her wrongdoings, but also these two definitely just want to bang. If you use Volt or Ko to defeat Chaldea right before the last boss, Sion doesn't get that whole scene with her and is just like, yeah, she's dead, let's go, gang. The ending plays out pretty much the same, until they're all back at the bar where Volt points out to Sion, hey, your girlfriend's a robot, we're gonna get old and she's always going to look 15 and that's really weird. But hey, Echidna shows up to be a bouncer with Volt. Meanwhile, in Ko's story, way more context is provided. That phone call he makes right at the beginning, well, now we get to hear all of it. Remember the lady in the opening cinematic that we never see the face of? The same one that flies the ship and lights up the train and we still don't see her face? Well, she's a contact of Ko, because according to his load screen lore, he's actually a special agent undercover watching Dominique and he got these stupid tribal tats to help hide his identity, who cares? Most of his extra dialogue is all internal monologues everywhere that's more lighthearted quips than anything substantial. However, Ko has a major gameplay section that is completely unlike any other part of the game. When all three get separated, Ko goes undercover for a stealth section. The stealth gameplay, though, is a Simon Says section where you have to match whatever pose the enemy does with you. These poses are named things like Old Man in Thought, Lonely Warrior, Unparalleled Friendship, and A Lady's Temptation. Is it working? If you don't do it correctly, it breaks out into a fight. The thing is though, it's actually better to fail because you need all those bouncer points to make sure Ko doesn't suck ass by the end. Matching the poses is actually really easy to do anyway. You have plenty of time to read and react and got it?
Identify yourself!
Damn it. All the fighters that show up to shoot down the rocket ship are also thanks to Ko and his contact Leanne, who finally got 1 million subscribers, so she gives us a face reveal. The rest of Ko's playthrough is pretty much the same through the final Duragon fight, who goes down to his overalls again, but because it's my third playthrough, Duragon has a third form! Behold! Unclasped overalls. This extra fight plays out exactly like the rest, with me spamming the uppercut attack to juggle him. I guess this explains why he was topless in his overly sexy space death scene. Ko's ending back at the bar has him being his same stupid Ko self. He tells his police force he basically wants to keep being a bouncer because friendship or whatever. But surprise! He has an extra boss fight the others don't. Ko goes to the Central Plaza for a final showdown with Leanne. Why? I don't really know, but there it is. It's super anticlimactic and ruins any semblance of pacing the story had. Then Leanne just leaves. Wink? Credits. Okay, I skipped over this earlier, but the credits are amazing. It plays an original song called Love is a Gift, and it's sung by renowned R&B singer Shanice Wilson. It is so perfectly year 2000, and I kind of love it. It's the kind of song that if I were like 16 years old and hearing it, I would think, oh man, this song is so beautiful and deep, I can't wait to burn it onto a CD and play it for the girl I have a crush on in my mom's minivan. And at the end of the credits, it shows Dominique standing at a grave. Whose grave is she standing at? Is it her brother Duragon? Her parents she never got to meet? Or, since she's wearing Sion's pendant that she gave him at the beginning, is this centuries into the future where everyone has died of old age except for her because she's a robot? Sion, dead. Volt, dead. Ko, dead. Me, dead. And then she just finds a dog! It may sound like I don't like this game. That's not true. It's not good by any means, but oh my god, did I have an amazing time playing it. I was laughing out loud so much. I would not call it a classic by any stretch of the imagination, and I don't even think it was really all that good for the time, but I am so glad I played it. Now, usually at this point in the video, I have some sort of like final joke as a stinger right before the end slate, but I don't have one this time, so... Sorry?
The bounty.